It's a great pleasure. It's a great pleasure. It's a great pleasure to have all of you here today.
Well, good morning. Jerry Kite here with Naked Bible Study, and I didn't get to the second or part 2 of Romans 11 yesterday, so I'm doing it this morning. That's sometimes how life goes, right? So if it helps, go back. You might want to go back and listen to yesterday's video and then go through this, or go through this and go back and listen to it, or do both. Really would probably help. So the theme of Romans 11 is God's faithfulness, Israel's future, and then mercy for all, which is a blessing. A real key verse here in this chapter is Romans 11:29. For the gifts and calling of God are without repentance. For the gifts and calling of God are without repentance. So, a remnant by grace, Romans 11:1-10. God has not rejected Israel. God has always preserved a faithful remnant by grace, not works. Paul points to himself as proof that God has not cast off Israel. Elijah's story reminds us that God always keeps a remnant, even when it seems faith has vanished. And salvation's based on grace, not effort or heritage. And those are some key thoughts to keep in mind. Israel's stumbling is not the end. Israel's rejection of the gospel opened the door for the Gentiles. But God's plan includes restoration. This is considering Romans 11:11-15. Israel's stumble is not final. The Gentile salvation is meant to provoke Israel to jealousy, not replacement. Now, this was a big thing back in this time. You had Israel like, hey, we're God's chosen people. I'm sure that really made a lot of neighbors happy. Anyhow. God's redemptive plan is global and purposeful. So things to ponder as you're reading through Romans 11:11-15 is how can God use rejection to advance His purpose? What responsibility do Gentile believers have towards Israel? Then there's the olive tree illustration. That's Romans 11:16-24. And the main idea here, Gentiles are grafted into God's promise, but must remain humble. Israel is the natural branch. Gentiles are wild branches grafted in. Faith, not ethnicity, determined inclusion, and pride is warned against. Humility is required. Be not high-minded, but fear. That's in verse 20. And, some questions to consider during those verses 16-24. What dangers arise when believers become spiritually prideful? How does this illustration guard against arrogance and faith? In essence, that's what was going on with Israel at the time. The mystery of Israel's salvation, Romans 11:25-27. Israel's hardening is partial and temporary. A mystery is revealed. Israel will one day turn back to God. God's covenant promises remain intact, and Jesus, the deliverer, fulfills prophecy. So why is this called a mystery? Think about that as you're reading through verses 25-27. How does this section affirm God's faithfulness to His promises? In Romans 11:28-32, it's mercy for all. God allows disobedience so that he may show mercy to all. Both Jews and Gentiles experience disobedience. Mercy, not merit, is the common ground. God's plan levels humanity and magnifies grace. So when you're looking at verse 28 through 32, ask yourself, like, how does mercy unify believers from different backgrounds? What does this teach us about God's character? I remember when I first started reading through the Bible, just that overwhelming sense of, I wish I had encountered all this a lot sooner in life. The doxology of awe, Romans 11:33 through 36. Theology should lead to worship. Paul concludes with praise, not argument. God's wisdom is unsearchable. Everything begins with God and ends in his glory. The key verse there is verse 36. For of him and through him and to him are all things. Things to reflect upon. Does your understanding of God lead you to worship? How does humility deepen reverence? So some key takeaways from this chapter. God is always faithful, even when humans are not. Boy, I tell you, as you read through the Old Testament, it's gonna hit you right between the eyes. It's just people are knuckleheads, I guess. It's just amazing how unfaithful we humans have been. Salvation's by grace alone. Pride has no place in the gospel, and God's ultimate goal is mercy and glory. Okay, with all that in mind, go back and listen to yesterday's video, and I think you'll get a little more out of it that way. I love you. Hope you have a great day. Talk soon. Bye.